They are the final few steps, the last they will ever take, of the condemned men and women as they make their way to the execution chamber. Murderers, serial killers, and terrorists have all been put to death in the United States, one of the few Western countries to still execute prisoners. The day before the execution, the prisoner is moved from their cell on death row to the place of execution, known as the death house. At 8 p.m., the preparations begin. The prisoner is handcuffed and thoroughly searched. Officers aren't only looking for weapons they could harm other people with. Guards also want to make sure they have nothing they can use to take their own life. Then, the route to the death house also has to be incredibly carefully planned. It can't be straightforward, as one of the biggest risks is that the police van could be ambushed and the prisoner freed. This journey will be the best, if not the only chance the prisoner will have had to escape since they were jailed. Officers who have taken prisoners from death row to the death house say the journey is always a very solemn one. One guard said, "We all know where we're going, and why." When the prisoner arrives at the death house, they are taken from the car and into the building. It will be the last time they will ever see daylight. The prisoner is now inside the death house, and they will be constantly watched until the time of their execution. Guards are aware this is the time when many prisoners are desperate to take their own life. Inmates in the death house have their own private cells, containing a bed, a shower, and a toilet. The cells are close to the execution chamber. Then comes the time for the prisoner to try to get some sleep on their last night alive. Many are unable to rest and use the time to reflect on their lives. Most prisoners on their final day alive are woken up first thing in the morning at 4:30 a.m. This is to give time for any last-minute petitions for a stay of execution or other legal issues to be resolved. From this time, prisoners can spend time with loved ones and their family. They can also speak to the chaplain. There is always a desk in the cell, so some prisoners use this time to write down their thoughts. Inmates are also allowed to make several final phone calls. They have to write down the telephone numbers of anyone they want to contact. A guard then dials the numbers for the prisoner who can say their last goodbyes. From 8 a.m., the only people the prisoner will come into contact with until they are executed are the chaplain and guards. No more visitors are allowed. Chaplains in the death house say condemned men and women often tell them how afraid they are to die. Some write letters, talk about their lives, and others even sing songs. Staff in the execution chamber now have to test the equipment that will be used to end the prisoner's life. Straps on the gurney are tested to make sure they can hold the prisoner, and they check the phone linking the chamber to the governor's office is working in case there is a last-minute reprieve. If an electric chair is to be used, all the electrical components are tested. Despite it still being the morning, the prisoner has now been awake for 6 hours, and it's lunchtime. This is not the condemned man or woman's last meal, and they are given simple prison food. Despite this, it will be one of the first meals they will have eaten in private for decades. Then, all they have left to do is wait to die. If a prisoner is being executed by electric chair, now is the time they will usually have their head shaved. This is so the electrical current can pass easily through the inmate's body. The condemned man or woman can then spend more time with the chaplain. The only thing the prisoner is given when they enter the death house is a new prison uniform. This is smarter than their usual prison clothes, but before they can put their death uniform on, all prisoners must have a shower. Prisoners are allowed to write down what they would like for their final meal. But unlike the urban myths, there is a budget for how much can be spent, with some states allowing those about to be executed just $15 for their last meal on Earth. A prisoner's final meal is usually the first food they have been able to choose for 2 decades. There have been some unusual requests for final meals. Serial killer Ted Bundy ordered steak, cooked medium rare, fried eggs, hash browns, toast with butter and jam, all washed down with orange juice and milk. Oklahoma bomber Timothy McVeigh ordered 2 pints of mint choc chip ice cream. Murderer Victor Feguer ordered a single olive with the pit left in for his last meal. While serial killer John Wayne Gacy ordered 12 fried shrimp, a bucket of original recipe KFC, French fries, and a pound of strawberries. Execution witnesses arrive. These can be journalists, members of the victim's family, the condemned's loved ones, or total strangers. They are told to be as quiet as possible as they make their way into the witness chamber. the last walk. Times vary for executions from state to state, but they are almost always carried out in the early evening. The prisoner has to make the short walk from their cell in the death house to the execution chamber. It may only be a few steps, but this is the longest walk they will ever do. Most manage the few feet on their own, but they are still normally flanked by up to 5 guards. Almost all have by now accepted their fate. They know they are going to die, and there will be no last-minute reprieve. But as soon as they walk into the execution chamber, the first thing a prisoner's eyes slip to is the gurney or the electric chair. The lethal injection is now prepared. Doctors will not attend executions because it's against their code of conduct, so a specialist team is now in place to administer the fatal jab. The curtains between the execution chamber and the witness room are now drawn, and those condemned to die are given time to make their final statements. But not all states allow long, or any time at all. Kentucky grants 2 minutes, while Pennsylvania only allows inmates a written statement. The time for talking is done. The chaplain lays their hand on the prisoner, and their life is ended.